My name is Jack Knight Winters, and I'm going to be, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Jonbenet Ramsey murder investigation. I've been studying this murder, this cold case, for quite a few years, and today I wanted to go on the public record with it, so this video is being made public record. I'm going to be presenting my findings in 4 different parts. In the first part, I'm going to provide a very brief and general outline or a breakdown of the events that took place on December 25th, Christmas Day, in the year 1996 at the Ramsey household. In the second part, I'm going to be presenting evidence in this case. In the third part, I'm going to be providing my interpretation or my conclusion or synopsis of the events that transpired on that same night. And then in the fourth part, which is probably going to be a separate video, I'm going to discuss all the characters in this cold case, and as well as all the characters that came around and introduced themselves into this case years later, or months later, or years later, okay? So the general breakdown of the events. But before I kind of went there, I wanted to just basically tell you who killed her, okay? Burke Ramsey killed Jonbenet Ramsey on the evening of December 25th, 1996, with a heavy metal object like a mag-light flashlight. And the father tried to stage a kidnapping in order to cover up the murder. And he might have had help from the military-industrial complex, and I'm not positive on that, but I thought I'd throw that out there. I put in approximately 50 hours of research into this cold case back in 2015. I've watched the depositions of both John and Patsy Ramsey as they were interviewed individually. Each deposition was about 2 hours each. I filtered through all the theories on YouTube and on many different websites. I've looked through all the forensic evidence. I brushed myself up on the FBI statistics regarding murders that take place in family houses, family homes. And then I've watched some videos of Fleet White showing up to a courtroom here in Boulder. There was some video footage of Fleet White showing up in the city of Boulder courtroom, making certain requests, okay? I met with Fleet and Priscilla White. I didn't do that. I didn't organize that meeting the way most people would do it. I summoned them. I'll just say it that way. I summoned them. I ended up meeting them at a Starbucks in Superior, Colorado. Although I didn't bring up Jonbenet Ramsey, I just kind of want to get a general feeling or kind of detect the energy that they had, since they were best friends of the Ramseys at the time of the murder. I've watched Linda Arndt's testimony, Detective Linda Arndt's testimony regarding the murder. I drove to a church in Arvada, which was operated by Bob Enyart. Bob Enyart is a guy that the Keikoa family was saying killed Jonbenet. Okay. Now I want to discuss the reason that I started investigating this to begin with. I've been studying magic and sorcery for 20 years, and I know through my experience as a ceremonial magician that December 21st through December 25th is one of the most important occult holidays. So Jonbenet being murdered on Christmas Day definitely got my attention. The other reason is just near proximity. The Starbucks where I used to hang out in 2015 was only 3 blocks away from Jonbenet Ramsey's house where she was killed. So just by near proximity, 3 blocks away, I was just kind of interested. And the third reason is just it's unsolved. There's so many rumors, and they seem to contradict each other, and there's so much filler and so much crap on the internet regarding this cold case, so I thought that I would look into it. So those are the reasons why I started investigating this to begin with. I might be off by about 5%, but I believe that my version of events is about 95% accurate. So let's go into let's talk about like the general breakdown of events that happened here. So on December 25th, Christmas Day of 1996, the Ramsey household consisting of John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, Burke Ramsey, and Jonbenet Ramsey, all went to a Christmas dinner party at the residence of Fleet and Priscilla White. The Ramsey family all came back to their house at 755 15th Street, which has now been changed to 749 15th Street. Patsy Ramsey called the Boulder police in the wee early hours of the morning. Boulder police showed up, and then shortly after the police showed up, Detective Linda Arndt showed up. She was the first detective on the scene that morning. A ransom note was found on the stairwell that was leading from the basement up to the living room. The ransom note said that the kidnappers would call the house around 10 o'clock a.m. to discuss the terms of exchange. They said the ransom note had said that Jonbenet had been kidnapped and that they would call around 10 a.m. to discuss the exchange. Nobody called at that time, okay? Nobody called that whole morning. Jonbenet's body was found shortly afterwards in the basement, and John Ramsey carried the body from the basement to the living room. So now I just want to show some pictures of Jonbenet Ramsey and members of her household. These are some pictures of Jonbenet Ramsey. She was a beauty pageant contestant. She was in the beauty, and you can see her mom was a beauty queen as well. There's plenty of. She was definitely in the pageantry arena, doing a lot of beauty pageant type stuff. And this is the house they lived in, which is now at the address of 749 15th Street. Okay. This is a picture of her skull in the autopsy. These are autopsy photos. Her skull was fractured, and it was fractured quite a bit. That wasn't a light fracture. Something hit her head really, really hard. It would have to in order to crack her head like that. The bruises around her neck indicate that blood was still flowing at the time she had the cord tied around her neck. Okay, you can't get a bruise anywhere on your body if your blood is all coagulated. Okay, so the very fact that she had a bruise on her neck indicates that her blood was definitely flowing at the time. Okay, so it was the cord around the neck which actually did kill her, I should say finally killed her. Okay, these are pictures of her panties and her long johns. It's pretty clear. You can tell that she either peed her pants before or after she received the head wound. The coroner found undigested pineapple chunks in her stomach, indicating that she was killed shortly after she consumed some pineapple chunks. The fact that it was undigested means she didn't have time to digest that food. So from the time that she ate the pineapple chunks, she must have been killed shortly after. I don't know how long it takes to digest pineapple chunks, but you got to figure probably no more than an hour and a half or something like that. Okay. There's a flashlight that was on the kitchen table, as you can see there. I do believe that's the flashlight that killed her, that cracked her skull. Okay. This is a white cord. A white cord was tied to a paintbrush, and this is called a garrote. And I'm not really going to go into saying what I think a garrote is used for. I've heard some theories, but just so you know, this is called a garrote. Okay. This is a prusik knot. Okay. It's used in rock climbing and things of that nature. A lot of people are saying that the only people that would know how to tie a prusik knot is a Navy man. This isn't a normal kind of knot that people learn in the Boy Scouts. It's just not a very popular knot. It's something with this very specific purpose. Okay. A yellow tablet was found on the kitchen table. And the thing about this is that When police investigated the house and they went looking for evidence, not only did they find the ransom note, but they found a yellow tablet and a pen. But when they flipped through the top pages of that tablet, they could see that there were indentations made. And they analyzed the indentations. They analyzed the indentations and found that there was at least 2, possibly 3 copies of this ransom note written. So what that means is someone had grabbed this tablet and wrote 2 copies, 2 rough drafts, before they finished up with the third. That's kind of odd. No one would break into a house and write 2 rough drafts. You know, that's ridiculous. You would have that all, if you knew what you were going in there for, and you knew you were going in there to kidnap a child, you would have that already. You wouldn't need to stop and, I mean, who would take an hour, possibly hour and a half to construct this, to fabricate this, note, and then write rough drafts? Okay, by the way, that's a very key piece of evidence. There's about 4 to 5 key pieces of evidence in this cold case, and that's one of them. Okay, that yellow tablet with the ransom note written twice is key evidence. Okay. Yeah, and the other. Okay. So now, and then the bruises around her neck, I would say that's another piece of key evidence. So now let's talk about some other things. This is like verbal testimony. This wasn't really part of the autopsy, nor would it be, but it was testimony from like Linda Arndt. Okay. So apparently, Detective Linda Arndt had overheard a phone conversation that John Ramsey was having over the phone. Apparently right around 11 a.m. So this is about 5 hours after the police and Fleet and Priscilla White and friends of the family and police showed up. After everyone was already there at the house for quite a few hours, one of the police, and I'm not sure if it's Detective Linda Arndt or not, but one of the policemen overheard John Ramsey on the phone scheduling a flight to Atlanta, Georgia, where the family actually had moved to Colorado from. And the first thing I got to note about that is, okay, guilty people flee. Guilty people don't want to stick around. That's the nature of people that have guilt. They have shame, they have guilt. They don't want to stay in the area of the crime. That they need relief and they need peace. They need a remedy. They need to leave. And so one of the policemen overheard John Ramsey on the phone trying to schedule a flight out of Atlanta. I mean, his daughter was just murdered, or and he's trying to leave. I mean, he couldn't even wait for the next day. He just had to get out of there. Okay. And although I can't find any photos of this, some other kind of, I guess you would say, hearsay evidence, or one of the policemen was saying that apparently Patsy Ramsey had been wearing the same clothes that morning as she had been wearing the night before. And, middle-class women don't do that. That's not something middle-class women do. They don't sleep in their Christmas party clothes from the night before. Okay, the other thing that one of the policemen had mentioned was that Jonbenet was found with ponytails still in her hair. She still had a ponytail in her hair, okay? Both girls and women alike don't go to bed with ponytails in their hair, okay? If they do, it'll pull your hair out. All women know you don't go to bed with a rubber band stuck in your head. It'll pull your hair out. You won't wake up with half your hair. So it's pretty much obvious that they had been up all night. Another thing to note is John Ramsey owned a company called Access Graphics, which was later purchased by a company by the name of Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a very, very popular and famous corporation in the military-industrial complex. Okay, their company was headquartered on Pearl Street Mall in downtown Boulder. And Dwight Eisenhower did warn us, and John F. Kennedy too. Both presidents had warned us about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. And I don't know that they had anything to do with this, but I'll mention that a little bit later, okay? So here's my synopsis. Okay, this is my interpretation or conclusion of the events that transpired that night, okay? So the Ramsey family did have a normal night out with their friends, Fleet and Priscilla White. They went to the residence of Fleet and Priscilla White. They did have a Christmas dinner party, and they came back in the late evening. Don't know what time of the evening, possibly around 10 o'clock. I mean, you got to figure how late, you're with your friends in a comfortable environment, and you're having some drinks and whatnot. Okay. So they came back probably, I want to say, anywhere from 9 to 11 o'clock at night. They did come home that night. Burke Ramsey had his normal bowl of pineapple chunks, as you can see in this photo. So apparently, Burke Ramsey was frequently, he pretty frequently had a bowl of pineapple chunks. That was like his thing, that was his go-to food. So his parents, one of his parents had given them this bowl of pineapple chunks. Okay, Jonbenet Ramsey took some pineapple chunks out of Burke's bowl, probably in some kind of antagonistic little sister type way. I mean, I have a little sister. I know that they can be antagonizing. I'm guessing she took the pineapple chunks out of the bowl, threw them in his mouth, and then she probably took off running. You know how that is. If you have little sisters, you know how that is. Burke grabbed a heavy metallic object in order to exact revenge on his sister. He was 8 years old, by the way. She was 6 years old. And I'm pretty sure it was the flashlight that you see on the kitchen table. You can tell by the fracture in the skull is, I mean, that is a big fracture. That is a really deep fracture. She had to be hit really hard with something very, very heavy and metallic. And because that flashlight happens to be right there on that table, I'm pretty sure that is the flashlight that was used to kill her. He clubbed her over the head with it. She was knocked unconscious, but she was not dead. Okay? Although she probably would have been dead within a couple hours, even with the help of hospital staff. Now the father, John Ramsey, and there's some rumors and speculation as to whether he was in Navy intelligence in his earlier years, in his 20s and 30s, or maybe he was still in Navy intelligence, I don't know. Usually once people get into the intelligence community, they kind of stay in there. And given the fact that he was being bought out, his company was being bought out by Lockheed Martin, which is very, very, renowned in the intelligence community, makes me wonder if he was still in intelligence. John Ramsey decided at that point to stage a kidnapping. And as to why would he stage a kidnapping? It was either two reasons. Number one, to keep his son safe from incarceration. They may have figured that we have one dead daughter. What's the point of having our son go to jail too? But at the same time, who could convict an 8-year-old boy? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what to say about that one. I'm not sure many juries would convict an 8-year-old boy and send him to prison for his life. That's hard to believe. But the other theory is that he was trying to avoid an autopsy. Jonbenet Ramsey was a beauty queen, and she was very cute. She was very pretty. And it's possible that she was having sex with older men, running the circuit, the beauty queen circuit. I don't know that the coroner has said anything about. There's a lot of, the forensic evidence, I don't believe, had said that there was definitely any penetration. It didn't say anything about her hymen being broken or anything like that. There's just some rumors on the internet that I don't know. I don't want to make that too credible. I don't know why he would have staged this kidnapping, but he did. Okay, for one reason or another, that's exactly what he did. He had every intention of taking his daughter's body outside and burying her somewhere in the city of Boulder, Colorado. Now, see, here's what threw this case off and made it so difficult to interpret, was that they had this ransom note left on the stairwell by these, kidnappers. And But then they found Jonbenet Ramsey's body in the basement just a few hours after they found the ransom note. So that would lead one to kind of to question that and say, well, why would a kidnapper leave a ransom note and then forget to take the body? That doesn't make any sense. And then they just left her in the basement and then left the ransom note and then took off, ran out the door. And that's clearly not what happened. So that's just ridiculous. So he had every intention of taking his daughter's body outside and burying her somewhere. So what happened was he dictated a letter to Patsy Ramsey, and she wrote it down in her own handwriting. She wrote 2 copies, 2 rough drafts, before making a third and final copy. And the third copy was placed on the stairwell. Okay, so the plan was, whether it was to avoid their son getting sentenced to prison for life or jail for life or something, or whether it was to avoid an autopsy to find out any sexual trauma that she had gone through or any kind of sexual intercourse or interaction. Either way, they were going to stage a kidnapping, and then they were going to take Jonbenet's body and go bury it outside somewhere. Okay, they were going to bury her body, and so their plan was that they would make a call to the police, say, "Oh my God, we think our daughter's been kidnapped." Police would come, detectives would come. They'd look at the ransom note, and then they'd scratch their heads for a while, be confused, and then after a few days, it would all boil over. They wouldn't have to deal with it anymore. Okay, but that was their plan. Okay, but what happened was, it looks like Patsy Ramsey. Oh, and by the way, so yeah, they staged this kidnapping. So John Ramsey tied a cord around her neck. She was still alive at that time because, like I said, blood was flowing. He tied a cord around her neck, created this garrote with a prusik knot, and that's actually what finally killed her, because she wasn't dead yet. Like I said, if she has a bruise around her neck, that indicates blood was still flowing. She was still alive, but she was knocked unconscious. Okay. This might be where I'm off by about 5%. I don't know. It is possible that John, being in the military intelligence community, being connected with Lockheed Martin, which is very, very heavily, they have a lot of assets and a lot of resources. That's a company that's very, very wealthy. They are not short of cash, okay? And they're not short of experience, because you don't get to be a military-industrial complex unless you know how to do the, black arts. We'll call it the black arts. Kidnapping, extortion, blackmail, murder, stuff like that. So this is where the 5% variance comes in. It's possible that John sought help from his friends at Lockheed Martin to assist in covering up the murder and staging a kidnapping. This seems like even a little bit too much for him. Even if he was intelligent, it seems like he would almost need help with that. Now, here's something this is another key piece of evidence. So I've given you 2 pieces of key evidence. If anyone wants to look into this. The first one, as I told you, the bruises around her neck indicates blood was flowing. The pineapple chunks that was undigested, that's another piece of key evidence. Okay. That yellow tablet that was found with 2 rough drafts, that's the third piece of evidence. The fourth piece of evidence, which is verbal testimony coming from Linda Arndt. Detective Linda Arndt from the Boulder Police Department went on a major news network, and she said that the ransom note said that the kidnappers were going to call at 10 a.m. to make the exchange. Linda Arndt says, was it 10? Linda Arndt says that around 10:30 or 11 o'clock, neither Patsy nor John Ramsey seemed disturbed that the kidnappers had not called the house at 10 o'clock when they said they were going to. Now, that's a fourth piece of key evidence. That is very, very important testimony. If your child was kidnapped, and the ransom and the kidnappers said, "We're going to call at 10 a.m. to make the ransom," wouldn't you be at the phone, anxious and nervous, waiting to get that call, wanting to hear from your daughter, wanting to know what's going on? She says that after 1 to 2 hours went by. They showed absolutely no concern whatsoever that the kidnappers had not called. She said when she realized that, I think she said it shocked her. She said her hairs like probably stood up on her arm. She got goosebumps and chills. That was the confirmation. At that point, she says that she knew that the killer was in the house with her that morning. And she was correct. The killer was in the house with her that morning, okay? So that's the conclusion of my investigation. Burke Ramsey, that's the final conclusion of my investigation into the Jonbenet Ramsey murder, okay? I believe this to be 95% accurate. This is pretty damn accurate, okay? Burke Ramsey clubbed her sister over the head with that flashlight you see there that I showed you. Parents, for an unknown reason, probably to avoid an autopsy, not wanting an autopsy to be done on her vagina, not wanting anyone to see what was going on down there in her pants, decided, hey, it would be better just to hide the body, stage a kidnapping and everything, okay? So those four, focus on those 4 pieces of evidence, and I'm going to finish. I'm going to make a second video tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking about all of the different people that showed up afterwards in the months and years later after this murder that really had nothing to do with the case at all. And these are going to be members of the intelligence community. Okay? Okay. Winner's out.